Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Billie Jean King Cup Special, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
Garcia holds off Boulter's best.
Cornet downs Harriet dart.
And Raducanu's absence is under the spotlight.
Kim, Chris, today is the 14th of April and we are here to catch up on all the action from the Billie Jean King Cup qualifiers, Great Britain versus France. And it is a very special time for the podcast because we are not recording virtually at Tennis Weekly HQ. Oh no, we are in the lovely city of Coventry.
We are indeed, and we have a lovely view of the cathedral.
Well, you say lovely view. This has actually already been a source of contention, listeners, because Kim booked the accommodation. It said cathedral view in the description. And Chris, the cathedral view, it's underwhelming at best.
I'm still looking for the cathedral, Joel. I've really tried to find it. Kim says that you can clearly see it. All I saw was a tree.
There's a spire outside the balcony
Where is the
window.
spire? I can't see any sort of spire.
In the nice sunny dawn of tomorrow, I'm sure you'll be able to find it. I'll point it out to you. But no, we are here though, and that's the main thing, all together, which is lovely. We've seen some live tennis, also lovely. Some great tennis, which we'll be getting on to in a second.
Lots of tie breaks.
Look, 5 tie breaks today. I don't think I've ever seen so many... all in a row live at tennis before. That's been the story of the day, isn't it? Tie breaks. But before we get onto the actual tennis, I suppose there is a bit of an elephant in the room in terms of before play even begun at the tie. Chris, you very kindly came to Coventry before me and Joel did. You were at the press day yesterday where the teams had their first kind of press conferences. And there was a obviously question asked about why a certain Emma Raducanu was not in attendance. She's not playing the tie. She's playing Stuttgart, which starts next week. And An Kyothfong had a few things to say about it. An Kyothfong being the Team GP's Billie Jean King Cup captain. When it came to Emma Raducanu's absence. So let's firstly have a listen to what Anne had to say.
She sounded a bit tense and a bit angry, didn't she, when that sort of topic came up? It was almost a sore spot, I feel.
I think in the room we were all a little bit surprised because we've all kind of been impressed with Anne before, and she tends to be pretty level with what she says and doesn't give anything away. And I think she wanted to be known that Raducanu did not make herself available. And also around those comments of Raducanu not knowing when this tie was being played. I mean, it is the same.
Oh, she would have known.
Oh, I think she would have. And it's probably just, as we talked about, a flippant comment. But you do think that it probably doesn't help the fact that she's not here and didn't know when it was, when it's actually the same time every year. And it's the same clash because of her sponsor is Porsche. And it's the Porsche Grand Prix over there.
Yeah.
So I think it's... a little bit of an awkward one, and I do think that it is true that Emma does want to be part of the team, but I think right now it's not the priority.
I know. I mean, we'll get on to what I think is so awkward because Caroline Garcia is here and she's playing Stuttgart, but she's also playing for France. But I mean, just talking on Raducanu, do you feel like the Raducanu conversation in the build up to this tie, do you feel like it's overshadowed the tie itself? I know she's like the hottest thing since sliced bread, it feels like. Do you feel like it's overshadowed the tie somewhat in the build up?
I think it might have done, and I think actually it's a bit of a disservice to the team that we do have for Great Britain, because it's the same team that played in the Cup finals in November in Glasgow, which you both went to. They got to the semi-finals. They did super well, probably exceeding expectations. And I think it's probably taken a bit away from their achievements from last year. And, we saw today they didn't quite manage to get the job done in the singles matches. But, we saw very valiant efforts from both players. But so I think it's a shame maybe that the Raducanu issue has come up. But it's something that we certainly have to address, because many people listening might be wondering, where on earth is she? She's your number one ranked singles player for GB.
I mean, arguably, you could say... there is talk about, like, where is Emma Raducanu, but there's also been similar murmurings about other British players. Jodie Burrage, for example.
Yeah, Jodie Burrage has had a really great run of form, and that question was also asked, and Anne said that her selection had to come in before some of Jodie's best results had come in on the ITF tour. So I think I don't necessarily think that that's that great an answer, because she was missing last time and she was someone who could have been selected. So you have to feel that if you're kind of a Katie Swan, a Jodie Burrage, or even a Fran Jones, who's the only British player to make a semi-final this year, you have to be asking a couple of questions as to whether this is the strongest team. But then again, as Kim said, it's been very close.
Do you feel like there is an argument to say, like, with the selection, is there an argument to say around, like, it being sentimental to the team and the fact, the successes they had in Glasgow last year, and as a result of that they're like, okay, let's see what they can do again? Or do you think this genuinely is, like, the best team that we could put out?
I think when we get onto the tennis, we will talk about kind of Katie Boulter, but she is someone who can play against the top players very, very well. So she had some big wins. That makes perfect sense to me. Harriet Dart played so well last year in the Billie Jean King Cup finals, and then the doubles pair of Olivia and Alicia also played well. So when you look at it, you can understand why you would select that, but obviously it has to be addressed because you haven't picked your top two players for your country.
Let's listen to what Caroline Garcia had to say about it, because she was also asked about Raducanu's decision making. So we can hear from her just now. So Garcia there saying, obviously it's not ideal that Emma's not playing, but I guess ultimately it is Emma's decision at the end of the day. And we were talking about Garcia having to go off to Stuttgart, but actually she the play finishes tomorrow, which is Saturday. She's probably not playing in Stuttgart till perhaps Wednesday, so still got a good few days. It's quite feasible to do both, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to hear her say, we adapt, and I liked that approach that she gave, and her ability, I think, to take tennis week by week. We know there are always kind of going to be scheduling issues, and yes, there are Billie Jean King Cup qualifiers on clay, and it perfectly matches up to the clay swing that's come in. But I liked her kind of readiness to be like, well, it's not everything is in my favour. It's not completely integrated with my schedule, but I love playing for my team. I love playing for my country. And, that's enough for me, regardless of it being on an indoor hard court. So I actually really liked how she said that, and is kind of like taking on the conditions as they come.
And she hasn't played a match on clay yet. So I think it does show just how committed she is to the team, and the fact that she says, you know what, I'll adapt, and Stuttgart is a tournament where it does suit her game. It's indoors, it's quick. But on the court, it was very slow. So maybe this is a bit of clay practice.
I know. For me, it was almost a little bit ironic, because I feel like a surprise to us certainly was how slow it was. Almost like a clay court. The match times were giving me flashbacks to Nadal versus Zverev in the Roland Garros final, last year. Given, I mean, just for example, the dart match, Dart Cornet, 2 complete sets took over 2 hours 20 minutes. I don't think I've seen a completed straight sets match take that long before.
Yeah, and I mean, Garcia against Boulter, those 3 tiebreak sets, 3 hours and 26 minutes. So, yeah, absolutely. I was thinking this is like Rafa on a clay court, at Roland Garros, like that semi-final against Zverev last year. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about the Garcia-Boulter match to begin with, because first match of the day, always going to be quite an intriguing encounter, I think, given that we know Katie Boulter can perform very well against top players. We saw that at Wimbledon last year when she took out Karolina Pliskova on centre court.
And she ran Sabalenka really close.
Absolutely.
I always think about that match. I was there for it, but yeah, as you said, it shows the level that she can play at. And she was, during the match against Garcia today, she was also pushing that level. Yeah,
she was a break up in that first set, got broken back, went to a tie break, took that first set, and then very similar fashion actually in the second set, but it was Garcia this time that went a break up, lost the break, went to another tie break, Garcia clinching that one, and then in that final set, Katie Boulter up again a break, Garcia breaking back. Garcia having ebbing and flowing. Katie Boulter did really well to take it into a last set tiebreak because she did save a match point at 5-4. But I mean, I think she was obviously very disappointed that she wasn't able to come out on top, given that it was so close. And Garcia in press was also very much like it just came down to a few points. It's almost luck of the draw in a way because it's such fine margins.
Yeah, I think that match was very high quality. It was very entertaining from the off. Some great serving attributes were on display, but also they're both players that really go after the ball. And that was something that no matter what the scoreline was, if they were down, if they were up, they still kept their commitment to making those shots. And that made for some really entertaining tennis. And I think because they are the bigger hitters who are playing today, and the court was slow, that was by far kind of the most entertaining and kind of interesting from that perspective. But from a Katie Boulter perspective, it does kind of always beg the question, if you can play this well, why can't we see this all the time?
Well, just on that, does it make her one of the most frustrating players on the WTA Tour in the British setup, given the level that she shows? But it feels like injuries always seem to get the better of her. She's never able to build momentum over a long enough period of time. And yes, we get these glimpses, particularly in the team environments, which I think is very interesting to see, but we don't necessarily see it on the tour.
Yeah, I think it's a strange one. I
don't understand.
Well, she has the game, and we talked about like if she was fit and if she was playing regularly at the level we see on the tour. I mean, she's pushing the world number 5, 3 hours 26, 3 tiebreak sets. That is top 10 tennis. And I think she said in her press conference she's been playing even better in practice. So it kind of begs the question that obviously she's been very unlucky at times, but if you can bring it out in the practice court, how come you can't bring it out in a match situation on the weekly? So I think that is a difficult kind of situation for her, because I'm sure she might be struggling for some of the answers there. But either way, when it comes to selection, she made it clear that she was the right choice, because pushing the world number 5 in the way that she did and playing the way that she did absolutely justifies her position in the team.
Yeah, I mean, given that there are other British, female players like Jodie Burrage, Katie Swan, actually physically ranked higher than her. But Boulter, we know on these sort of high pressure occasions, top matches, she has been known to deliver, I guess, more so than those other players. So I think absolutely the right decision to have her in the team and to play her in this match. But it just came down to, a few points here and there, and Garcia really just upping it in that last set tiebreak. She said, that she just became even more aggressive, which again makes me think, why didn't you do that earlier in the match? You might not have needed to go to a last set tiebreak. But it's all, if players could play their absolute best all the time, then they would. There's a whole load of reasons why that people can't always perform to their highest level in every situation. We did actually speak to Garcia after the match on whether victory after a long match feels even sweeter than a short one.
Is it extra sweet to win such a close match that was so tightly contested?
I always take a 6-3, 6-3 win, but if I have to fight and try to push my limits, I do it, and I'm very happy with the win. of course, it was a great challenge for me, and I tried to push my limits because of the match was super tight. Then I got super frustrated, and it was really like trying to find a solution, even when the solution was tiny. And of course, it's a great win for me, for my confidence, and it proves you that mentally you're stronger than you think.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that answer. I thought it would be absolutely so pleased to have got it done, to be on the right side of the victory. But she was actually like, you know what, if it could be 6-3, 6-3, that would be ideal. And then we spoke afterwards and thought, well, why not 6-love, 6-love? Save yourself a lot of time and then get yourself in peak physical condition going into the clay next week. So not ideal for her playing 3 hours and 26 minutes, because if she's playing tomorrow in the doubles, that's a question we have to look at. It might be one where the 3 hours and 26 she spent on court might actually hinder some of her progress, because you don't often play potentially 3 matches before you start a major tournament.
Yeah, and what I actually liked about hearing Garcia in press was her, she was asked about, was she surprised by Katie Boulter's level that she brought to court, and she said no. She knows that she is on her day, a very, very tough competitor, and we absolutely saw that today. I feel like her serving was one of the key attributes that got her through, particularly in those tight moments. But I mean, it was just great, I think, to see her back to kind of where she belongs in that sort of top 5 category. It was great. I feel like her as well, interacting with the crowd, the French crowd, the British fans. It just created a great atmosphere for the match. And as you said, it was one where it felt like points were ending on winners more so than unforced errors.
Absolutely. And I have to ask him, you've witnessed the Renaissance in the flesh. What did you make of it?
I was very impressed by the Renaissance's Coventry themed nails, actually.
Yes, the sky blue nails, wasn't it?
Sky blue nails. I wanted to ask, was that because she knew that Coventry, that's the city colours, the football team?
Maybe she's a closet Coventry City fan.
Possibly. I mean, the tennis is being played next to the football stadium. It's in the same complex. So, yeah, I thought that was a funny little detail that I noticed. But, it was fantastic to see the match, to see Garcia play and to have such a fantastic match, actually. It was quite a long one. We needed a good cup of tea afterwards. But it was well worth it. And like you said, it was a good quality match, not one that's ebbing and flowing and going on because of poor performances. It was very high standard and very enjoyable.
Just on Katie Boulter, where does this put her in terms of your perception of her? Does it just make her even more frustrating to know her ability? And we don't see that on the tour, because her last match against a French player, she lost to the French number 9 out in in the middle of, what was it, in the middle of nowhere on a hard court, and now she can then almost flick a switch and then do this against Caroline Garcia.
I mean, they did beg the question if Caroline Garcia was the right pick for this match, because maybe they should have got Margot Ravoy to play, because she managed to take her out in straight sets. Yeah. So
it is night and day, isn't it, between
it is night and day
and these setups.
And to wrap up the chat on Katie, I think it's one where she said she's going to hit her shot, she's going to go for them, she's going to miss them some days, and she's going to do a really good job at trying to do her best no matter what, but it's not always going to go swimmingly for her.
Let's take a very quick break, but we'll be back in the second half talking about Harriet Dart against Alize Cornet, which was our second match of the day. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to Tennis Weekly, sponsored by downloadtennis.com. Now we're going to look at Cornet against Dart, so our second match of the day.
More tie breaks,
but only 2 this time.
I'm not going to lie, I was pretty thankful this didn't go to a third.
Yeah.
Is that a bit negative of me as a GB fan?
We obviously want Team GB to win and to do well, but I think when it got to almost 2.5 hours of play, I think we're getting into the depths of the second set, thinking, oh yeah, this could go really late if they do go to a third. But it wasn't to be, because Alize Cornet stepping it up in that second set tiebreak to take it quite comfortably 7-3 in the end. So it was just shy of 2.5 hours, that match. Shame though, because Harriet Dart, got off to a positive start. She went a break up, and she had a set point in that first set, didn't she, Chris? And very, very fine margins. What went wrong for Dart in that tie break, which prevented her from capturing that set?
I think it was probably the forehand, if we're being honest. I think we all made this comment that the backhand is so solid and she can do so much damage with it, and she can do more than just redirect. And I feel like on the forehand, the nature...
It's a rally shot.
It doesn't put the pressure on. And I think Cornet is someone who also isn't known for having the biggest game of both wings. And it was like playing a slightly better version of herself, really. They're both great movers. There was some fantastic retrieval from both of them. But when it came down to it, there's a bit more weight of shot and a bit more consistency from Cornet.
Yeah, I mean, Cornet's defence throughout that match I thought was fantastic, and everything Dart threw at her, I think Cornet, given the amount of experience she's had over the years on the tour, was just able to kind of take in and maneuver Dart into a position where more often than not she was winning the point. But it was, to me, although kind of obviously a very similar score lines in one sense with the tie breaks to Garcia Boulter, this to me felt much more of kind of an attritional battle from the baseline, who was going to make the first error as opposed to who was going to take the initiative and hit the winner. Yeah,
and I think especially the attritional element of that was very present in a particular point of the tie break. I think it was at 5-all. And then over my shoulder, I spotted that Caroline Garcia herself was actually watching it with us from the media centre. It actually felt very natural, to be watching it amongst the French as well. I felt it added to the atmosphere that was there. But
it was a point where everyone just sort of stopped
gasping.
What they were doing and watching the screen, because it was a really
and she missed
tense
it.
point.
And I had to explain to her how good a point it was. I had to call it epic, which I think wasn't my most eloquent. But I did manage to communicate that it was a very good point. And then I managed to say to her how many tie breaks we played, and she agreed it was very unusual.
She got some words out.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe next time we'll see if we can watch hopefully a live second singles.
Maybe she'll have to listen to this podcast to catch up on what she missed. But yes, that was nice. And actually, talking about atmosphere, it was a really good atmosphere in the arena with both sets of fans. Like the French brought, a very vocal crowd over. There was obviously a brass band for the Brits, which was really good. Like it was almost a sellout, wasn't it? Really
all I will
vibes.
say is about the crowd and the stadium, the big heads. The cardboard cutout heads. Did they? I think I'm going to have nightmares tonight, or they're a bit freaky to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. If I was like Heather Watson, Harriet Dart, etc., I don't think I'd want my head on a massive bit of cardboard. But I'm sure they're used to, their face.
I'm not going to lie. A split second, I did wonder, would this look good for the Tennis Weekly podcast with our heads like blown up into kind of A2, and then I was like, no, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I think we'll leave that one, put that idea to bed a little bit. But so I mean, in the end, Cornet came through. France are 2-0 up, which means that tomorrow we have the doubles tie to start with at midday. That's obviously a live rubber. We've got Olivia Nichols and Alicia Barnett for Team GB. They will be up against Garcia and Mladenovic, who are the reigning French Open doubles champions. So very, very tough task to ask of the British girls. But, they've had really good results together on court. They did very well at the Billie Jean King Cup finals in November. They won their first title, I think, quite recently on the tour as well. Chris, what are you predicting for the doubles clash tomorrow? Do you think we're in with a good chance?
Well, I think something that we know about these sort of ties is you never know who's going to be nominated to play on that second day. You almost have to scratch the draw that's been made, because it's hard to know if Garcia will be playing. They are 2-0 up. It might be one that she'll play the singles, or it could be one that she might think, if we play our strongest doubles pairing, which is obviously Garcia and Mladenovic, that maybe they can get it done and she can hop on that flight to Stuttgart. But based on what I saw in Glasgow, I think that players that play regularly together, and this was the reason why Anne Kjovathong did pick this pair, is because they know each other's games inside out. Obviously, Garcia and Mladenovic know each other very well, but they do not play week in, week out on the tour. So I do think it's anyone's game. I think the girls are very fired up. I spoke to them actually impressed prior to the tournament starting. You'll be hearing that a little bit later on another episode. But they live for these moments, and so I really think they're going to bring their A game. And we've seen how close it can be when players aren't ranked anywhere near each other. So it's all to play for, and I think we're going to do it.
Oh, that is big. I mean, just on that, I think it's interesting just looking at the GB team as a whole, because Katie Boulter said it, I think Heather Watson said it, Barnett and Nichols have said it, and they really kind of stress the environment that they're in, the support that they get, and feeling like right at home to the point that it enables them to play to the best of their ability versus when they're on the tour and it can feel like you're alone, isolated in the middle, in a country way far from home. To me that was sort of interesting about that kind of support network. And is it, I guess, is there not necessarily a criticism, but do you think all like the GB players, they play really, really well in their home comforts where they've got this really nice support set up, which is great, but is it almost like they need to be able to do that away from home? And that's what the challenge is with going from these team environments into the tour.
Yeah, I also think something that we talk about quite a lot, and I always look for the Brits in draws. I'm always scouring everything from WTA to 125s to ITF, and I just always look for their names in draws, and I think they don't actually play as much as you'd think they would on the tour. I think that's something that Jodie Burrage has done particularly well. She's playing so much more than some of the players by dropping down to the ITF levels, actually got her ranking up a lot. So I think it's about getting yourself match fit, playing as many matches as possible, and I think doing well in a very sort of well-supported environment. I mean, obviously you'd expect that. You have all the home comforts as well as all of the network of team and physios they talked about, but ultimately that's not what life on tour is like. So I think you have to be able to do both, and that's something that I'd love to see lots more of the Brits playing in the 125s and playing in some of the bigger ITFs, because I think that is what playing professional tennis is all about. It's about playing as an individual on the tour on a weekly basis.
And I think there is one, arguably, if there is maybe one criticism of some of the GB players, the big match setup, the big match atmosphere, they absolutely thrive in that. And we see that, I think, particularly with players like Katie Boulter. You think of her best performances. For me, it's in this sort of format and in Grand Slams as well. But can they do it in those kind of smaller tournaments when there's not as many eyeballs on them? There's still, I think, a little bit of a learning process in relation to that. But I feel like it's, they're all aware of this. But I think for me, it's almost been magnified coming to Coventry and realising actually the difference between the tour setup and the kind of the team setup when you're playing for yourself versus playing for your country.
Yeah, I think, like Boulter said in the press today, she felt like she was just having fun out there as well. And I think maybe when you do have your teammates around you, you can be a little bit more relaxed, enjoy it a bit more, and then you just, hit more freely, play a bit more naturally. And that's also part of it and part of performing better. But let's just look quickly at what we've got. Tomorrow we've got the doubles tight. If that's a win for GB, we go on to having, a live singles rubber as well, which we've got potentially Caroline Garcia against Harriet Dart and Alize Cornet against Katie Boulter. The exact lineups may change depending on how players are feeling and whether the rubbers are dead or alive. But what's your, France are 2-0 up. Quick word from both of you. What's your prediction for tomorrow? Do you think GB can stage an epic comeback?
I'm going to let Chris go first because Actually, no, I'm going to go first because I'm just going to give the negative, pessimistic answer. I honestly think this is just, we have given a very, very good account of ourselves so far. It has honestly, I think, been both matches a point here or there. But France are just very, very tough. And I think personally, I think we're going to be losing the doubles and it's going to be over 3-0 or we're going to be at the dead rubber stage for the reverse singles.
I'm going to be the optimist. I do think that Olivia and Alicia are going to get the doubles. And then I do think that Garcia is going to play the singles. I'm not convinced she'll play the doubles personally. And I think Garcia versus Dart, she's got way too much firepower on this court, I think. And although Dart has beaten some big hitters in Badosa, she did get hit off the court by Raducanu in Glasgow. So I do also think that, well, not unfortunately, but for our French listeners, not unfortunately, but for a British interest, I do think that we're going to fall a little bit short, because I do think that key match was the Dart Cornet match today.
It's fine, because there's still a wild card available. We got the wild card last year. We're going to get the wild card this year if we need it. So it's all fine. It's all fine.
That's your bit of optimism to end with. And we'll hopefully see more of the Cathedral as well, won't we, Chris, tomorrow? So I think that brings us to a close for tonight's episode. And we'll be back to bring more from the action in Coventry soon.
Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our Billie Jean King Cup special, GB versus France, with the Tennis Weekly podcast. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come from the ATP and WTA tours.
We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Tennis Weekly Pod, or email us on tennisweeklypod@gmail.com. And you can also check out our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back tomorrow at Tennis Weekly HQ to look back on day 2 of the GB versus France Billie Jean King Cup finals qualifier tie. I mean, that is a ridiculous mouthful, but I've said it anyway. But I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye. Au revoir.
There we go. Exactly. And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.